Hi, welcome to talking about the next round of watching the standard meta. And today I got three decks to talk about. Not as much as I got to talk about for Pioneer. Man, is there some spice going on over there in that format. I've always said it was the best format, but they kind of went overboard this week. So it's going to be a little longer video if you want to watch it on my other channel. And the link is in the description. Um, yeah, so totally. We have three decks to talk about today and the meta shifts. Looks like three decks are pulling ahead away from the rest of the decks, and it's not really looking all that great. So let's dive into the actual stuff. Which, keep in mind, one of the decks I'm going to talk about from the get-go from the three are actually the top deck right now, because I just wanted to talk about it at a high level. I don't really want to get too deep with it. It's not really that spicy, unlike the other two. So let's go ahead and get into it. So we have Is It Prowess gaining up to 30% of the meta again, with Mono Red at 20% of the meta. With 12% of the meta, we have Omniscience, with everything else kind of just collapsing. Um, and now everything's kind of going to be fizzling around in the 3% down to 0.5%, where a lot of the decks looks like they're going to stay at, which is not a very good diverse format, right? You have these three, and then you have tons of stuff that barely make up a site, even just a percentage of the actual meta. Uh, Overlords is getting a little bit of traction. I imagine that actually that's not the same thing as like Pioneer, where you have access to incarnation and stuff. That really those the new enchantment creatures there do quite well. But Demir mid range, usually it should be pretty good into these two matchups, and something must have changed where this is just collapsing now. Uh, Overlords is still not probably not very good into these two matchups, so it can probably answer, the artifact, but that's about it. Like, what do you guys think about the standard meta? Like, this is absolutely looks horrible to me. Like, this meta looks so bad. Like, it's not diverse by any metric. I mean, you have two aggro decks as your top rotating decks. That's not really diverse, right? Usually you have a mid range pile, a combo pile, or a control pile, and one aggro pile. Two aggro piles make it. I don't know how that is remotely competitive or good for the format. The fact that aggro keeps going up while everything else is going down. Usually it should adapt to it, and you should see mid range go up, but clearly mid range doesn't have the pieces to do it. So let's go ahead and get into the first deck, which is the Is It Prowess deck. So Is It Prowess picked up the new Vivi from Final Fantasy. Besides that, it's still playing a couple copies of Monstrous Rage, the Cutter, Torch, Talent. You have Hatcher up here, and then you have some number of trainers, and then you have your this town ain't big enough, so you have a little bit of a grindy matchup package into the deck that loops with your talents. Storm Chaser's talent, you have a little bit of removal with Torch, and you have a late game with Stock Up, so you have that kind of package. So this is kind of like your aggro-ishly kind of tempo plays. It's more built around BV, I would think, than anything else. And maybe that's the key reason why mid-range can't stay up. Because as you've seen, the best mid-range black base pile is Demir. And I guess if they don't have a great way of answering Cutter, like it's not gonna be very effective in this meta. We have barrages in the side, good against blue based stuff, and white potentially, but spell pierce for tempo lines, unable to scream for bigger creatures, you just make them O2. A brave for smaller creatures, or the mirror where you're going to get rid of the cutter. Stroke for mid range control. Row, probably also pretty good there too. Then we have our removal / extra card draw. So that's pretty good as well in that matchup. You probably would want to cut your rage. It's not very good into those matchups. And you want to be able to just draw an extra card at the end step while also still having removal. So it's probably better than like something like Torch. You have Soul God Lantern for graveyard hate. That is the prowess deck that's been taking up about 30% of the meta share. Seems pretty good, right? Seems pretty healthy. Let's get into the next one. All right, so next we have this Golgari pile. Self-mill, built around Swarm, Marauder, and the new weapon, which is a 7 or a 9-drop 8/8 that has basically affinity for creatures in or permanents in the yard, I believe. We are not the Beanstalk deck. Remorse, a great removal spell for the strategy. Our mill package is built around Belmerk, which is really good here because you can mill late, early. Late, it becomes an actual threat that keeps milling. We have the brand new Towns Greeter, which is basically probably a better version of the old one. Because the old one only did lands. I guess this gains life, so it's slightly better. Because the old one just you top 4, pick a land, put it in your hand, and mill the rest. This one actually gains you life if it's a town, but we don't really play towns. So I guess it's just strictly the same card. But they don't have that in access to this format. Misery is a nice way to have removal that turns into discount for your main stuff. We have Soul of the Lost, nice little early game piece we could throw down. Gets really big with Maverick, also here, and Vermin to help fill our yard up on turn 1. And sideboard, we have a couple cut downs for removal. Against control and stuff like that, we wouldn't need to remove their graveyard hate. Might, as a nice little artifact and enchantment hate. Our graveyard hate is Ooze, plus Reclamation, potentially plus artifact enchantment hate. Dreams, nice way to hit artifacts and creatures, and exile something from the yard. Terror Sunder, exile-based permanent removal. And then we have our Garruk's Uprising for grinding matchups. Glisa as a nice way to stonewall aggro decks. Scrap Shooter to hit artifacts and enchantments. Shieldred for decks that draw a lot of cards. So that's pretty spicy deck in general. This deck did do quite well, so I would recommend if you want to try something different than the current top meta decks that have been just kind of terrorizing it, try this out. But I got one more deck to talk about. Let's get into that one. So last on my list, the card missing is, I think, Verona or something like that. For some reason, some of the cards from this new set don't show up, and their name is blacked. When you look at the list, I don't get why. So, but this overall is like a Naya self-discard style deck with Joshua. We have Esper Origins from the new set. It seems a little weird to be adding green just for this one card. I guess sideboard a little bit more too, but I don't really know if that's worth it. We have Overlord of the Boiler Biggles. We have a Nemesis, some Phomos, some Helixes, High Noon. The Elder Dragon War. Nice way to discard 2, draw 2. And then we have our land package. Like I said, we do have the other 4. I think it's a 5-drop. The 1 white-green card, I believe is what it is. We have Graveyard Hate. A little bit more help filling up our yard if you need to. Destroy Evil hits enchantments and mid-range pieces. Devout Decree for red and black decks. We have Reclamation for Graveyard Hate. Artifact Enchantment Hate. Pyroglasm for Sweeper against aggro. Shelter by Ghost for aggro. Nemesis as a way to stop life gain. And Surge as a nice way to hit. I guess you could pick 2 things here. So 3 damage to target creature, and then you also get to blow up a non-creature artifact, which is kind of nice against Cutter, right? So you can blow up the Cutter and a creature. Maybe snipe it too. But that's all I have to talk about today. So like I said, I'm going to go back one. Yeah, so the deck does play Yun, Hope, and we also have the one summon Balmont. So those are 2 cards that we don't really get to see in the actual view. For some reason, it's not really a thing. This deck that goes 3/3. It's not like the greatest record, but keep that in mind. It's a spicy deck you could play on the arena ladder. But that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know in the comment section which one of these decks you guys think is your favorite. And I'll talk to you guys next time.